The boy had already been told to lose before he ever laced up a glove. Not lose fair, lose on purpose. Go down in the fourth round, stay down, and don't get up. Because the men who owned the fight also owned something he loved a great deal more than a win. July 1959, Stockton, California, 80 miles east of San Francisco, in the flat cannery heat of the Central Valley, where a poor boy's only road out of the tomato fields runs straight through his own 2 fists. The arena is a converted warehouse on Center Street. It is 104 degrees outside, and worse under the lights. 2,000 people are crammed onto folding chairs, fanning themselves with paper programs, and almost none of them know the main event was decided 3 nights ago in a back office, on a single sheet of paper, with a signature line at the bottom. His name is Tomás Reyes. Everybody calls him Tommy. He is 19 years old. His mother is dying in a county ward 11 blocks away, and the men who run this fight are the only reason she still has a bed. In the cheap seats near the corner, a tall man in a pale summer suit lowers himself onto a folding chair. He bought the worst seat in the house on purpose. He has a program rolled tight in one fist, and he has not glanced at the ring once. He's watching the boy. Only the boy. A boy hawking peanuts looks twice at the man's face and nearly drops his tray. Nobody recognizes him yet. Here is the story. To understand why a 19-year-old would agree to lose on purpose, you have to understand what they were holding over him. Tomás Reyes was born in 1940 in a labor camp outside Stockton, the oldest of 5, the son of farm workers who chased the harvest up and down the valley with everything they owned roped to the back of a Ford. He picked his first row of tomatoes at 6 years old. By 10, he worked full days in the summer heat, his small hands bleeding by noon, and he learned young that the world had already decided what a boy like him was worth, and the number was small. He heard it in the way the foreman talked to his father. He saw it in the company store ledger that never quite let the family get even. He felt it every time a town let him know which water fountain was his. He found the gym at 12, a beat-up club above a hardware store on El Dorado Street, run by an old cut man who let neighborhood boy hit the bags for free. And the first time Tommy Reyes put his hands up, the old man went quiet, then crossed himself. Because every so often, God hands a poor boy the one gift that can carry him clear of everything he was born into. And Tommy had it. Fast hands. Faster than anything the old man had seen in 40 years. A jaw made of something harder than bone. And the thing nobody on earth can teach. He simply did not know how to quit. You could put him down, and he'd come up wearing a grin that scared grown men. His mother sewed his first real gloves herself. Maria Reyes worked the swing shift at the cannery, peeling tomatoes till her fingers cracked, and took in mending by day. And when Tommy turned 15 and his cheap gloves split at the seams, she sat up 3 nights and stitched him a new pair from leather scraps a saddle maker had thrown out. She worked his initials into the cuff in red thread, small and even, T.R. And she told him, "This is so you remember whose you are when you're in there alone." He wore them in every fight he won. He won 41 in a row. He turned professional at 18, not for glory, but for money. Because by then, his mother was sick, a tumor low in her belly, the kind that takes its time and then doesn't. The county would treat her, but the treatment that might actually save her cost money the Reyes family had never once seen in their lives. And that, exactly, is where the men found Tommy. That is the hook they set, and they set it patient, the way you set a hook in a fish you mean to keep. He sold his bicycle. He sold his amateur trophies for scrap brass, 41 of them, melted down for the metal. He sold the wristwatch his dead father left him, the only thing of his father's he owned. And it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. And somewhere in his gut, Tommy already knew that. A smiling man in a fine grey suit found him at the gym one evening and told him there was an easier way to look after his mama. "Win when you're told to win," the man said. "Lose when you're told to lose. Easy money, smart money." Tommy said no. Once, twice, 3 times he said no, because his mother had stitched "whose you are" into his gloves, and he knew the answer. Then his mother took a hard turn. The hospital bill came due in red ink, and the smiling man came back. And this time, he didn't smile. The man who owned the fight was named Sol Brand, a promoter, 56 years old, and the most dangerous kind of villain there is, the kind who never raises his voice. He wore good cologne and a pinky ring and called everyone boy and sweetheart, and he ran the only fight game in the Northern Valley, which meant he ran the State Athletic Commission too, in the way that matters, because 3 of the 5 men who sat on it ate Sunday supper at Sol Brand's table and golfed on his dime. 3 nights before the fight, Brand called Tommy into the back office behind the warehouse. The old cut man, Gil Foss, was made to wait in the hall, but the door was cheap and the walls were thin, and Gil heard every word, and he told it for the rest of his life. "Tommy, sweetheart, sit down, sit. How's your mother?" "Holding on, Mr. Brand." "Good, that's good. You and me, we're taking care of that." A pause, a match struck, a cigar lit. "Now, Saturday night. You're in with Dutch Halloran. You know Dutch? Big fella, comes out of Reno. He's got serious people behind him, people who've laid a great deal of money on Dutch Halloran going home a winner. You understand the kind of money I'm talking about, Tommy, the kind that doesn't lose gracefully." The sound of paper sliding across a desk. Tommy looked at the page. Later, he'd describe it to no one but God. It was an agreement. Brand's lawyer had even given it a tidy name across the top: Schedule of Performance. Round 4. A left hook to set it up, a right hand to sell it, and down, and the part underlined twice: Stay down. "You want me to lie down?" Tommy said. "I want you to be smart, boy. That's all I ever wanted from anybody." Brand's voice stayed soft, almost fatherly, and that was the horror of it. "I want you thinking about that ward on 11th Street, and that nice bed, and who signs for it every month. Here's the arithmetic. And listen, it's not personal. It's never personal. It's just arithmetic. You take the dive, your mother's bills stay paid, the bed stays warm, and you and me keep doing nice business together for years. You climb in that ring and try to win." A long draw on the cigar. "You make fools out of some very serious men, and your mother's bed is gone before the building empties out. Just gone, like it was never there. And there's nobody you can complain to, because every man you'd complain to is sitting at my table." He spread his hands wide, the picture of reason. "I'm not threatening you, Tommy. I'd never. I'm just the fella who reads you the odds." There it was, the cleanest cruelty in the whole world. They didn't have to break his hand. They didn't have to set a gun on the desk. They simply put his dying mother on one side of a scale and his pride on the other, and let the arithmetic do the rest. A quiet, patient, business-like evil, dressed in good cologne, with a signature line waiting at the bottom of the page. Tommy Reyes picked up the pen. His hand did not shake. That was the part that haunted him later, that his hand had been so steady. He thought about his mama, bent over a needle at the kitchen table by lamplight, stitching TR into leather scraps. This is so you remember whose you are. He thought about her bed on 11th Street and the machine of smiling men that could make it vanish between one breath and the next. And he signed his name, to lose. He walked out of that office a fighter who had already lost the only fight that ever mattered, the one inside himself. In the hall, Gil Foss turned his face to the wall so the boy wouldn't see him wiping his eyes, and he said nothing, because there was nothing on God's earth to say. The men in the good suits had made certain the boy had no good door left to walk through. That is how it's done. That is always how it's done. They don't make you choose wrong. They just take away every right choice until only the wrong one is left. Stop for 1 second. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your state in the comments. We read every single one, and I want to know how far Tommy Reyes' name travels tonight, after all these years. And if you've ever been backed into a corner where every single door was the wrong door, where the people with the power made sure you had no good choice at all, type the word corner in the comments. Type it for Tommy, because in a few minutes, somebody is going to climb the stairs and walk into that corner and stand right beside him. Don't you dare skip it. The tall man in the pale suit climbed the stairs to the gym the morning before the fight. He came up slow, on account of his size and the heat, one big hand on the rail, and the old wooden steps groaned under him like they knew something was coming. At the top he stood a moment in the doorway, hat in hand, letting his eyes adjust to the dim, taking in the smell every fighter knows in his bones, sweat and liniment and old leather and the rope dust that hangs gold in the window light. A 19-year-old was beating the heavy bag in the far corner like he hated it, like the bag had done something to his family. And the old cutman, kneeling to tape the boy's hands, glanced up at the figure in the doorway, and the roll of tape fell out of his fingers and bounced across the floor. and he came slowly to his feet with his mouth open, and he said one word. Duke? Now here is the connection, and you have to understand it to understand everything that follows. 30 years before, in 1929, Gil Foss had been a Hollywood stuntman, a fight double, a fall guy in the old sense, a man who took the punches and the tumbles and the wagon wrecks so the handsome fellows didn't have to. And in those lean years, he'd worked beside a young, broke, nobody bit player on a dozen cheap westerns out in the desert. They'd shared 1,000 cold lunches sitting on running boards. They'd slept in the same drafty bunkhouses on location. And once, on a picture out in the Mojave, in a stunt that went sideways, a wagon rig had rolled wrong coming down a wash and pinned the young actor underneath a half-ton of timber and iron, crushing the breath out of him, and the other men froze. It was Gil Foss who got his bare back under the axle and a fence post under the bed, and heaved, screaming, until the weight came up just enough for 2 others to drag the boy clear. Gil threw his back out doing it, and was 3 weeks in bed. He never sent a bill. He never even mentioned it again. Gil quit the stunt business when his knees finally gave out for good. He came home to Stockton, where he'd been born, and he opened a free gym above a hardware store and trained the poor boy of the labor camps for 30 years and asked nothing of anybody. And in all that time, he never once told a living soul that the broke nobody he'd pulled out from under that wagon in the Mojave had grown up to become the most famous man in America. The tall man crossed the gym floor, and he took Gil Foss's hand in both of his, and he held it. Heard you had a boy in trouble, Gil. How in the world did you... You wrote me, 8 months back. Long letter, good handwriting for an old fight man. The tall man's mouth went tight. Said you'd finally found a fighter who could go all the way. Said some men were trying to take it from him before he ever got the chance, and you didn't know what to do about it, and you didn't want anything for yourself. You just thought I'd want to know. He paused. I'm slow with my mail, Gil. Stack of it a foot high. I'm ashamed to say how long it sat. But I read it last week and I got in the car, and I'm sorry I didn't come the day it came. He turned then to Tommy, the boy frozen by the heavy bag, hands half-taped, sweat running down a face that had gone slack with disbelief. Tell me what they've got on you, son. And Tommy, who had told no one, not even Gil, the full shape of it, told this stranger everything. The mother in the ward, the bed and the bills and the red ink, the smiling man, the paper he'd signed 3 nights ago, the left hook, the right hand, the fall in the 4th. When he was done, the tall man was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, low and slow, and every word landed like a stone dropped in a still well. Now, understand what I could do here, son. I could write a check for your mother's bills and walk right back down those stairs. I could. I've got a soundstage in Los Angeles waiting on me, 100 people drawing pay this minute, while a director burns a hole in the floor wondering where I went. I've got a car at the airfield with the motor warm and a fistful of telegrams in this coat begging me to come home. I could leave you an envelope and drive off, and I'd have done a kindness, and not one soul alive would call it anything but generous. He reached into his coat, and the first thing he pulled out was not money. But money won't fix what they did to you. The second you signed that paper, you let Sol Brand tell you what a poor boy from the camps is worth. And that, son, that is the lie I climbed these stairs to break. He set the envelope on the bench, unopened. Now here's the part Brand doesn't understand, because men like him never do. The bills were the only thing holding you. They don't have your arm twisted, they've got your heart twisted, through that bed on 11th Street. So this morning, before I came here, I had a man pay your mother's bills, all of them. Every dollar she'll owe for a year, paid straight to the hospital in her name, in writing, sealed up tight where Sol Brand can never lay a finger on it again. His voice dropped. Your mom is safe. As of an hour ago. The leverage is gone. And a fixed fight, son, only stays fixed for as long as the fighter agrees to stay down. Tommy was shaking his head, eyes wet. They'll bury me, Duke. He owns the commission. He owns the ref. He's got the Reno people, and the Reno people don't lose money politely. He's got people, the tall man agreed quietly. And Saturday night, so do you. He looked over at Gil, and back. I'll be in your corner, on the stool, right behind you, where the whole house can see me. And I'll have every sports writer in Northern California in that building, in the good seats, with their pencils sharp. I've already made the calls. Because here's the thing about Sol Brand, son. He can fix a fight in the dark. He cannot fix one in the light. Not with 2,000 witnesses, not with the press watching every count, and not with a man in your corner he can't buy and can't scare and can't make disappear. He held out his right hand, that enormous hand. So the only question left that's worth a damn is whether you are done letting other men set your price. You want to take the dive and live small and safe? I'll drive you to your mother right now, and you'll never see me again. No hard feelings. Or, and something flared in the tall man's eyes, you want to find out what you really are. Tommy Reyes looked down at the gloves hanging on the wall peg, his mother's gloves, the leather scraps, the red thread, T.R. So you remember whose you are. He took them down, and he put them on. I'll ask you one thing, the tall man said, and his voice gentled. Just the one. When this is over, when you know in your own bones what you're worth, someday you stand in somebody else's corner. Some boy the world already counted out before he threw a punch. You do for him what nobody ever did for you. He closed Tommy's taped and gloved hand inside both of his. You pass it on. That's the whole price. That's everything I'll ever ask. Have you ever been told to settle for less than you were by someone who held something you loved in their hand? Have you ever wondered what you might really be capable of if just one person stood behind you and flatly refused to let you fold? Have you ever watched somebody decide, all at once, that they were finished being small, because that's the moment that matters, not the punch, the decision before the punch, the exact instant a person stops asking the world's permission to be worth something. Everything after that is just bookkeeping. But Sol Brand did not get where he was by losing quietly, and word travels fast in a fight town. An hour before the bell, in the cinder block locker room under the warehouse, the door opened without a knock, and two men came in. Not Brand himself. Brand never did his own talking. These were the Reno men. One wide and slow-eyed, one thin with a smile like a paper cut. Gil Foss stepped between them and the boy out of pure reflex, and the thin one put a flat hand on Gil's chest and moved him aside like a curtain. Just here to wish the boy luck, the thin one said. He crouched down in front of Tommy on the rub-down table, friendly, almost tender. You're a smart boy, Tommy. Your people raised you smart. 4th round. Left, right, down, and you go home to your mama a hero who lost on his feet. Everybody loves a boy with heart who comes up short. They'll buy you drinks for a year. And if I don't go down? Tommy's voice was steadier than his hands. The thin man's smile didn't move. Then you find out the valley's a small place, and hospitals have rules about who keeps a bed, and a young man's hands are delicate things, and accidents happen on dark stairs. He patted Tommy's knee. But that's all ugly talk. You're smart. We're not going to have ugly talk. And then the door opened again, and the temperature of the room changed. The tall man filled the frame. He didn't say anything at first. He just walked in, slow, and set his hat down on the bench, and looked at the two men from Reno the way a man looks at something he's deciding whether to bother stepping on. The thin one stood up. Recognition crossed his face, then calculation. This ain't your business, mister. Made it my business this morning. The tall man's voice was flat as a creek stone. You boys want to threaten somebody, you threaten me. I've got time. But I'll tell you what I told the boy. There's 3 rows of newspaper men out there I brought myself, and they all know my face, and they'll print every word I feed them. So you can go back and tell Sol Brand the leverage is paid off, the boy's mother is safe, and the only thing left to decide tonight is whether you fellas want your names in tomorrow's sports page next to the word fixed. He took one step closer, and he was a head taller than either of them. Now, you came in here without knocking. You can leave the same way. Go on. For a long 3 seconds, nobody moved. The wide man's hand drifted toward his coat, and the tall man's eyes went to it, calm, almost inviting, and the hand stopped. Then the thin man laughed, short and ugly, and tugged his partner's sleeve. Big night for heroes, he said, and they went. When the door shut, Tommy let out a breath he'd been holding for a minute. You weren't scared of them. I was plenty scared, the tall man said, picking his hat back up. Being brave isn't not being scared, son. It's deciding the thing you're walking toward matters more than the thing you're scared of. He set the hat on Tommy's head, too big, comical, and for the first time in 3 nights the boy almost smiled. Now let's go find out what you're worth. Saturday night, 104 degrees under the lights, 2,000 people, and Sol Brand ringside in a cream-colored suit and a pinky ring, certain he already knew exactly how the night would end. He didn't know about the cashier's receipt folded into Tommy's sock, Maria Reyes's bills paid in full, her bed secured a year out, beyond his reach forever. He didn't know the leverage was already gone, and he did not know who was sitting on the stool behind the boy's corner, until the tall man rose to lash the water bucket to the post, and a murmur of recognition rolled through 2,000 people like wind across a wheat field, and grew, and became a roar, and Sol Brand's easy smile slid right off his face. The bell rang. Round 1. Dutch Halloran came out of Reno like a freight train off the rails, 30 pounds heavier than the contract claimed, a brawler with cinder-block fists and a face that had stopped a lot of punches and forgotten none of them. He expected a frightened boy who'd backpedal and stall until the fourth. Instead, Tommy Reyes stepped into him and snapped a jab off the big man's nose that turned his head clean around. Then another. The crowd came up off the folding chairs, thrilled and baffled. Ringside, Sol Brand sat very, very still. Round 2. Dutch decided the boy was just selling it, making it look honest before the dive, putting on a show for the marks. He bulled Tommy into the ropes and dug both hands deep into his ribs. Thud, thud, and Tommy felt something crack low on his left side and the breath go white hot. He did not go down. He pivoted off the ropes, popped the jab twice, and laid open the skin over Dutch Halloran's right eye. First blood, and it wasn't the boy's. The two Reno men leaned together and stopped whispering and just stared. This was not the fight they paid for. In the corner, the tall man knelt and put his mouth to the boy's ear and said 6 words. "You're not down. Stay not down." Round 3. Now Dutch knew the dive wasn't coming, and a bought fighter who won't fall is a live problem for every man who bet against him. So Dutch came out to end it, swinging from the floor, and he caught Tommy flush on the chin with a right hand that had a freight train behind it. And for the first time in his 19 years and 41 wins, Tomás Reyes hit the canvas. The arena screamed, and here is where it all nearly came apart, because the count was rigged too. Brand's own referee dropped down beside the boy and started a count at double speed, hungry, the words tumbling out, ready to wave the whole thing off the instant Tommy's knee so much as kissed the canvas again. 3, 4, 5. The tall man was on the ring apron before the count hit 6. His big hand clamped the middle rope hard enough to make it sing, and his voice cut across the whole roaring building, flat and hard as a slammed cell door. "Count it honest, mister, or count it in front of every sports writer in California. They're sitting right there. Every one of them is watching your mouth move." And he pointed, and they were there. 3 rows of them, pencils up, and the referee's eyes flicked sideways to that press row, and the hunger drained out of his face, and his hands slowed to its true and honest pace. 6, 7. Tommy Reyes got his glove on the bottom rope. Ribs cracked, ears full of ocean, one eye starting to close. And he got up. At 8, he got up, and he found his corner with his eyes, and he found the tall man standing there, not cheering, just nodding, slow, like he'd known all along. Round 4, the round he'd been ordered to fall in. 2,000 people knew it. The contract had leaked through the gym like water through a cracked pail, and the whole town had come to see whether the poor boy would lie down. A strange hush fell as the bell rang for the 4th, the entire building holding a single breath. Tommy walked to the center of the ring. He looked, once, dead at Sol Brand, sitting ringside in his cream suit and his pinky ring. And then he threw the left hook from the agreement. The exact set-up hook he'd been ordered to throw. The one written on the paper, left hook to set it up. He just didn't follow it with a fool. He followed it with everything Maria Reyes ever stitched into him. The right hand he'd been told to sell a dive with, he buried in Dutch Halloran's body for real, up under the heart, and the big man folded an inch. Then another. Then a third, the air going out of him in a grunt the front rows could hear. The crowd was on its feet as one animal now, screaming a name they hadn't known a week ago, a name out of a labor camp. Reyes, Reyes, Reyes. And the poor boy drove the bought man from Reno backward across the ring on legs that no longer wanted to hold him up. A short left to turn him, a right hand straight over the top, clean, the punch of a lifetime, the punch of 41 melted down trophies and a wristwatch sold and a mother bent over a needle. And Dutch Halloran, 30 pounds heavier, bought and paid for, sent to win, went down in the 4th round. The wrong man. In the wrong corner. Falling at the exact minute the script said somebody was supposed to fall. He did not get up. The arena came apart at the seams. Solbrand was on his feet screaming at his own referee, but there is no fixing a fight that 2,000 witnesses just watched go honest. There is no frightening a boy whose only leverage you've already lost. And there is surely no making the problem disappear with the most famous man in America standing in the corner, pointing at a press row he packed himself. The Reno men were already moving up the aisle toward the doors, fast, not looking back. They knew. The night had gone wrong in the one way men like them cannot survive. Out loud, in the open, under the lights, with witnesses. And it got worse for Solbrand still, because the tall man had brought more than reporters. He'd brought a photograph of the dive agreement itself, Tommy's signed schedule of performance, quietly copied by Gil Foss in that thin-walled office 3 nights before, and he put it into the right hands before the building had even emptied. Within a month, the State Athletic Commission, shamed into motion by headlines it could not ignore, opened a formal inquiry. Within a year, Solbrand's promoter's license was gone. The fixed fight racket that had run the Northern Valley for 2 decades dried up and blew away, because the one thing those men could never survive was daylight, and a stranger had flooded the room with it. But the tall man was gone before the ring even cleared. In the noise and the crush, with the boy hoisted up onto the crowd's shoulders, nobody saw the big man in the pale suit slip out the side door into the night heat. Only Gil Foss caught him, grabbing his sleeve at the exit. "Duke, Tommy's going to want to thank you. The whole town's going to want to know who." "Don't tell him my name, Gil." The tall man settled his hat against the warm dark. "He didn't win because of me. I just cleared the road of the men standing in it. He's the one who walked it, on cracked ribs, after getting put down. That was all him." He pressed something into Gil's hands, the dive agreement, torn clean in half. "Burn that. And tell the boy one thing from me, word for word. Tell him, now he knows what he's worth. Don't let any man tell him different ever again. And someday, he stands in somebody else's corner." He paused at the door. "That's the whole price, Gil. Same as I owe you and never could pay. Pass it on." And he walked out into the dark, and a long, pale car turned south, and he was gone. Gil Foss never told Tommy the stranger's name, not in 12 more years of working that corner together. He told him only the message, over and over, until the boy could say it in his sleep. "Now you know what you're worth. Pass it on." That same night, Maria Reyes sat up in her narrow bed in the county ward on 11th Street, and her son came in still in his trunks, sweat-soaked, one eye swelled shut, carrying a cheap brass belt and a paid-in-full receipt, and he laid his head down in her lap. She stroked his hair with the same cracked hands that had stitched his gloves, and for a long while neither of them said one word. She lived another 9 years. The treatment worked. The bed, the bills, every dollar of it, paid by a man she never met and never got the chance to thank, in a transaction she never fully understood. Tommy kept the gloves, he kept the message, and he wondered, every day for the rest of his life, who the big man in the pale suit had been. Tomás Reyes fought 11 more years and never took another dive as long as he lived. He was never a national champion. The big money machine never quite forgave the boy who'd embarrassed it on Center Street, and the title shots he plainly earned kept finding their way to other men's hands. He knew why. He made his peace with it. But every fight after that July night, he fought honest, and he fought free, and he never once let another human being set his price. And when at last he hung up the gloves, he did the one thing the stranger had asked of him. He stood in other people's corners. He took over Gil Foss's gym above the hardware store the year the old man died, 1971, and for 40 years he trained the poor boys of the Valley labor camps for nothing, the sons and the daughters of farm workers, the boys the world had already counted out before they ever made a fist. He told every single one of them the same thing on their first day through the door, his hand on their shoulder. "Now you know what you're worth." He never once explained where the words came from. He kept his mother's hand-stitched gloves hanging on a nail beside the door, the initials still legible in faded red thread, and every boy who ever trained there understood without being told that you did not, ever, touch those gloves. He kept the rule he'd been given, the rule he only ever half understood. Don't let them tell you what you're worth. stand in somebody's corner, pass it on. His daughter grew up to be a schoolteacher, his son became a firefighter, and then, in time, came the granddaughter. Lucia Reyes, born in 1990, grew up sweeping the floor of that gym and hitting the same bags her grandfather had hit, forever asking about the red-stitched gloves on the nail that nobody was allowed to touch. Tomás would only ever say that they were her great-grandmother's own work, and that once, a long time ago, a stranger had helped him learn what they were worth. She had the gift, the very same fast hands, the same iron jaw, the same thing that cannot be taught. She did not know how to quit, and you could see it scare the other girls. And she came up in an era that finally, at last, let a young woman do the thing her grandfather had been so quietly denied. In 2016, Lucia Reyes boxed for the United States of America at the Olympic Games, a labor camp granddaughter out of Stockton, with her great-grandmother's red thread sewn fresh into the cuffs of her competition gloves for luck, standing under the brightest lights in the world with the flag across her back. As for Sol Brand, his license revoked in 1960, he drifted to Las Vegas, ran small confidence games on tourists, and died broke and entirely forgotten in 1974. His name survives in no place on earth but a single commission file, marking the day they took his livelihood away. The Reno syndicate scattered the moment the daylight hit it. The whole vast machine that had presumed to decide what a poor boy was worth turned out, in the final accounting, to be worth nothing at all. But the message lived, and so did the gloves. And so, it turned out, did the torn dive agreement, because Gil Foss, God keep him, never did burn it. In 2015, the year after Tomás Reyes died at 75, Lucia was clearing out the old gym to keep it running in his name, and behind a row of framed fight photographs, she found a flat tin box that Gil Foss had taped beneath the ring apron decades before and told no one about. Inside the tin, the dive agreement, ripped in half and carefully saved, Tommy's steady young signature still dark on the page, the cashier's receipt for Maria Reyes's hospital bills, paid in full, dated July 1959, and a sealed letter in Gil Foss's shaky old hand, the ink gone brown, addressed on the front, to whoever asks who sat in the corner. She opened it standing beneath the red-stitched gloves, in the gold of the same window light. In it, the old cut man told the whole story, the back office deal, the dying mother, the locker room, the rigged count, the fight that went honest before 2,000 souls, the man who cleared the road and slipped out the side door and refused every scrap of the credit. And there, at the very bottom of the page, was the name Gil Foss had carried in his chest for 56 years. The name Tomás Reyes had wondered about every day until the day he died. The man who sat in the corner was John Wayne. Today, those hand-stitched gloves do not hang on the nail in the gym anymore. Lucia gave them, together with the torn agreement and Gil Foss's letter, to a Boxing Hall of Fame exhibit dedicated to the fighters that history overlooked. They rest now in a glass case, and the red thread of a cannery worker's needle still shows bright against the dark old leather after 60 years. Lucia set them in the case with her own hands, and she asked that the cuff be turned so that the initials face the window light. The placard beneath the glass reads, "Hand-stitched gloves, made by Maria Reyes for her son, 1955. In July of 1959, featherweight Tomás Reyes was ordered to throw a fight to protect his dying mother's hospital care. A stranger paid the debt, sat in his corner, and refused to let him fall, and the fight went honest before 2,000 witnesses. The stranger asked only that Reyes someday stand in another fighter's corner. For 40 years he did. The stranger refused to give his name. At the family's request, it is left off this placard, the way he wanted it. That is all it says. No name. The hall offered more than once to add it. The family said no. When the curator asked Lucia why, she said the old cutman had left instructions in his letter, and her grandfather had honored them every day of his life, and now she would too. He cleared the road, she said, and then he let my grandfather walk it on his own 2 feet, and then he disappeared, so that my grandfather would know, for the rest of his life, that the win was his own. A man like that doesn't want his name on a placard. He wanted my grandpa to go stand in somebody's corner, and my grandpa stood in 1,000 corners. I'm one of them. That's his monument. We'll keep his name the way he left it. So the gloves sit there in the light, the red thread of a poor woman's needle still holding after all these years, and the boys who come through on tour press their faces close to the glass to read the small initials in the cuff, and they ask the docent who the stranger was, the one who sat in the corner. And the answer printed beside the gloves is the same one the old cutman carried to his grave with a smile on his face. Just a fellow who cleared the road. And it is enough. If this story reached you tonight, do me a favor, pass it on. Share it with a fighter, with a boy who was ever told he wasn't worth much, with anyone who ever needed just one person to stand in their corner. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. There are more Duke stories coming every night at midnight, and unfortunately, they don't make men like John Wayne anymore.